Yes, it's Joe Walsh.
It's like your favorite station.
Hey y'all, this is Kristin Casey, author of Rock Monster, My Life with Joe Walsh.
Just like they do on the radio.
And you are listening to Joe K on the Play That Rock and Roll podcast. Now it's all about the podcast, and I'm telling you, Joe K is one of the best.
I read the book, the only story that it sort of reminded me to, and I don't want to compare because they're definitely different stories, but I read Mackenzie Phillips's High on Arrival about 10 years ago. Oh, excuse me, about 5 years ago. She put it out about 10 years ago. And did you read that book?
Oh yes,
That
it's one of my favorites.
That is such an intense story too. So this is like when you were putting this book together. Did you talk to or contact authors like Mackenzie, or, and again, this isn't a good comp, but I think of her because there are some parallels with your story, Pamela DeBar, I'm with the band. Did you have any contact with authors who put together memoirs or stories like this to give you guidance?
Yeah, to some degree, not a large degree. I would say the ones the one that I was the most in contact with was an incredible writer and woman named Sarah Catherine Lewis, and she doesn't have anything to do with the rock and roll world, but she wrote, she's a former stripper and addict, and she wrote a book that had a lot to do with her, with that part of her life. And she came through town and we met and we just really connected. We both had blogs at the time. We both had stripper blogs at the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And she seems to have sort of disappeared, and I'm not sure where she went. So if anyone watching this knows where Sarah Catherine Lewis is, please let me know. And I'd love to be back in touch with her. I read a ton of addiction memoirs, and also I love, all sex worker memoirs, strippers and escorts.
Yeah.
There was Jenny Ketchum has a wonderful one. She was a porn actress. And I wasn't in touch with her, or Antonia Crane. Antonia Crane has another wonderful book, a little like Sarah Catherine Lewis's. As far as the rock and roll world, Pamela DeBar's I was in touch with, and she so graciously wrote a wonderful blurb for my book jacket. We had the same agent, Peter McGuigan. Yeah. And, when I first read Pamela's I'm with the band, it's funny to me now that I actually have a blurb on my book. I mean, if you'd have told me then that I was actually going to write a book and that, the amazing Miss Pamela was going to write a blurb, I would have said, okay, well then I can die happy. Now I have no worries in life because I was so impressed. She was so groundbreaking with what she did. The way she owns her sexuality and just has and she got all kinds of hell for it from, a lot of pearl clutching people out there who don't understand, what groupiedom is or can be, or the way, she expressed it. And then when the book came out, I got in touch with women who actually got in touch with me were connected to her. Some women who'd had rock and roll flings or relationships. So we've all connected on Facebook who's that guy from the Partridge Family? Bonaducci. I did it. His ex-wife, she and I had a lot of similarities. What's her name?
I don't know her name, but I know Danny is a pretty intense fellow.
Yes, and yeah, so, she really understood. She and I are very different women, and I feel terrible for going blank on her name right now because her book's really interesting and very good. But the main similarity was that our partners were very intense, out of control addicts. She was not one. She had like a codependent kind of thing, She was always trying to manage him and his craziness. And so there were a lot of similarities. Trying to think of the other, any rock and roll chicks that that wrote memoirs. I'm probably forgetting some. Amy Dresner, she wasn't a rock and roll chick. She's a wonderful memoirist who wrote My Fair Junkie. We got in touch as well right after her book came out, right before mine came out. So a handful, like half a dozen of them. Yeah, and it's been great because you kind of feel alone in this world when you have that experience. And I'm not a super social extroverted person. And so Pamela's group of ladies that she wrote a book where that some of them contributed stories.
Right, yeah.
You know, their own personal stories. I can't think of the name of that one either right now.
Let's Spend the Night Together?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So they get together every year, or, you know, not this year because of the pandemic,
No.
but so they've invited me out to the next get together, and we might be doing it online this year. I don't know. So hopefully I'll be meeting some of those ladies in person because they're fantastic and they just get me and they get what it's like.
Yeah, she still seems to be like the queen of, maybe not the groupies anymore, but definitely has a very strong following and a close circle. I have a lot of admiration for her as well, you know. Yeah. So it was...
She wrote an article. She wrote a couple articles recently in it's an online magazine called Please Kill Me, which it's absolutely worth going there and reading. She details, you know, more of her relationships and her, you know, they're just fantastic and fascinating.
You read Felder's book. What did you think of it?
It's been a while since I read it, but I mean, it was great. It was fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, it was sad
Yes.
what happened. I always felt like, you know, a little bit of maturity or maybe a few therapy sessions. Didn't Metallica get therapy? Didn't Metallica?
Yes, I think that's right. Yeah.
I always felt like if the Eagles had a few group therapy sessions or something, they would have.
Sure.
It would have saved them all a lot of heartache. I just felt, I felt like it was terrible what had happened. I also felt like Felder more than anyone, except maybe Joe, saw the Eagles as a family. And Joe was smart enough, it seemed to me Joe was smart enough to just, he knew how to pick his battles. And, you know, he knew the only way to be in that band was to let the two dictators be dictators. Right. And Felder just wouldn't allow that to happen. And it was a losing battle. And I think Joe knew it. I think Timothy probably knew it. Yeah. And Don, I think that there was, the book came across to me that for Felder, he was hurt that suddenly it wasn't the family or the brotherhood that it used to be, and he just wouldn't let that go, and it turned into this big thing. What I heard through the grapevine, I won't say from where, was that when he wrote that book, it had a lot more juicy details in it, and he ended up getting paid a lot more money for what he took out.
Oh yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. Just because, like, I do know he got a settlement when he finally settled all the legal stuff with the rest of the guys. But
I'd love to read that book.
Yeah.
I left Pam in the dust and became Pamela.
Absolutely one of my favorite podcasts. Got to give them a listen.
Spinning in the sunlight, spinning in the sunlight.